Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei Was the Son of King and Diane the Prince of Fairies and Giants movie. Before we start, please go support God of Hope for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistaken characters' gender, but of course Issei is a male. 3,000 years ago there was a war where the Sins fought to save the world from the demonic race. Now humans have forgotten the magical era. And the races became factions. King and Diane were able to have a son whom they named Issei. Follow this story of the Fairy Prince. Chapter 1, The Prince of Fairies and Giants. This is an ancient story in the time when humans and supernaturals had not yet separated. Years of battles against the Demon King led to the creatures that are now just tales disappearing from human life. The demons were not completely wiped out. Some peaceful ones decided to form families and live in the underworld. The goddesses no longer existed thanks to the death of the supreme deity, but an archangel loved by her was able to set heaven in motion. Humans have forgotten the magic, leaving it as just a children's story. But there were two races that despite the passage of centuries still endured until now. Today the current races or factions are in a ceasefire due to losing their leaders and giving way to a time of peace and tension to a possible war that could end everything. But at that moment in a dimension where giants and fairies live in peace. A young woman with long brown hair was in labor. Well, fairy women and giants can shrink to human height, you'll find out later, helped as much as they could, and her husband, a young man with orange hair and butterfly wings, held his hand in support of her. Come on Diane, just a little more. I can't stand it anymore, it hurt so much that I'm scared, she said with tears and tired. Diane, remember everything we've been through, what we had to do to be able to achieve this, remember that we are always with you, and now we will no longer be just two, we will be three, we will be a family, said the fairy now with tears in her eyes. While this was happening outside in a hallway, 4 people were waiting, listening to the screams of the one they consider a friend and teammate. They know the difficulties the couple has had to go through and hope that their dream of becoming parents could finally come true. Already passing an hour. Come on Diane, Sama bid. And with a final cry from the chestnut. The cry could be heard. The fairy midwives cleaned the newborn creature. He was a baby who wouldn't stop crying. The new parents could not contain their happiness when they saw that their dream had come true. Starting a family. Hours passed and the Sins were gathered together with those who are now parents. Diane was in bed with her baby in her arms who was covered by a red blanket. While King watched from his chair. She knew that she must now have more responsibilities since she already had a child, but she didn't care. For the 2 people he loves, he will do anything to protect them along with his kingdom of fairies and giants. All the rest are made up of. The sin of greed, Bam and his wife Elaine. The sin of lust, Gothier. The sins of gluttony and pride, Merlin and Escanor, a marriage. They talked about things and what those times were like when they were a team together with Captain Meliodas and Elizabeth. But they smile knowing that now they are happy. Thing we need to give our little one a name, said Diane, happy to have her precious son in her arms. I know, I don't have any, nothing comes to mind. I have a suggestion. In the human world I met a couple who took me in out of kindness, they were planning to have a child. And what happened to them? Asked Bam, somewhat bored but curious about the doll's words. They were murdered by a terrorist genocidaire on one of their trips to France. That left a bad taste in everyone's mouth. Why? While the baby was crying and Diane was calming him down. Now my child, now. And what is your name? Elaine asked, trying to change the subject. The name they wanted to give to their desired son was Issei. Issei? King asked about that name. But at the mention of that name the little baby laughed tenderly, making his mother happy. King, I think he likes that name, said the brunette. Issei. The baby was laughing. Issei. He laughed again. So you like that name, well. The fairy with her powers levitated the baby from Diane's arms. Well, as you like, from now on you will be called Issei Harlequin, Prince of Fairies and Giants, and apart from your beautiful mother, I will protect you from anything that wants to hurt you. Every word the Fairy King said made the baby now named Issei smile and extend his little arms to be held by his father. Which happened because King himself took it. The fairy smiled with joy and happiness. Knowing that his son loves him as much as his wife does. And everyone looked happy as a new voice came into the world. 6 years passed. And in the kingdom where its inhabitants, both giants and fairies, live in harmony. While Issei-sama. The scream was heard. And flying over the buildings and trees was a little 6-year-old boy who, defying gravity, flew freely and had fun. While being chased by 3 other fairies, all women. Issei-sama, stop, you're going to hurt yourself. The fairy girl with magenta red hair and blue eyes with pink and blue ribbons tied to the left side of her head shouted, very worried. Bam, that kid only causes problems, said a girl, annoyed by how the brown-haired boy didn't obey and did crazy somersaults and pirouettes in the air. She is a girl with long blonde hair tied in a high ponytail and with orange and greenish yellow locks. Apart from the fact that her left eye was covered by her hair, her eyes are like honey and she has a short lock. In other words, she has little patience. He's a child, it's obvious that he's restless at his age. Said a girl with short blue-black hair with two small clips on the sides and magenta eyes that tried to reach the boy and not lose sight of him. Hey fairies, why don't you stop, Issei-sama? A young giant with long honey hair and grey eyes was shouting at the fairies from the ground, frustrated for not being able to do something. He's very fast, it's not that easy to catch him, the blonde shouted from above. Serena, calm down please, yelling won't solve anything. The young giant with dark brown hair tied in buns on the sides and blue eyes tried to calm her friend. I already told Diane-sama. The girl, almost similar to the other brunette, appeared, only she had a high ponytail. Issei-sama, please stop, the repeat applied. The little brown-haired boy stopped when he heard the girl. But why, Sakura Onachan? Flying is fun. But you could get hurt and you're still too young to fly at that speed since you couldn't control it. Hey, what's going on here? It was a woman who spoke while walking to the place, which those present immediately recognized. Diane-sama, the fairies bowed, the giants kowtowed before her presence. Mom, but when the child saw her he went straight to her arms. Issei, how did you behave today? Well mommy, daddy said today is the day and I'm so excited. I know you're so excited that you can't stay still, but you must obey those who take care of you, who are Sakura and Serena. Yes, mommy. Well, I think it's time to go to the ceremony. Your father must be waiting for us and I see that you're already dressed. She looked at her son who had clothes that reminded her of ancient times. Ancient times when the 7 deadly sins were the ones who protected the world from the demon race. The fairy king's treetop was reached. In the center, the same king looks in front of him at a cocoon made of pink leaves, and inside it, you could see a golden glow. It's ready now. Many fairies and giants gathered at the foot of the great tree for the ceremony, in which the tree will name Issei as its successor. Dad. The king turned to see his son who was happily smiling with excitement. His mother was in the arms of her son who was carrying her. Of course she was human-sized at that time. King. Diane, Issei are here, how did my little prince behave? He behaved very well even though he caused problems for the girls. Gosh, I don't know where this little one gets his restlessness from. They both smiled and looked at their son who was looking at the pink leaves with the same curiosity that children his age have. Ahem, Issei, are you ready for your initiation? He turned, very determined to be the next fairy king in the future. Yes dad, I want to be someone as strong and noble as you. Fufufu son, you must not be like me. That confused his son. What do you mean, dad? What I mean is that the next fairy king should not be as strong as the previous one, if not stronger. You will forge your path and make your legend by being a better fairy king than me. Issei at that moment could understand that his father wants to be surpassed, knowing that in the future, he will be a king in which his kingdom looks with confidence and security, and he is willing to be the fairy king. I understand dad, I shouldn't be like you, I should surpass you and make you proud of me. The fairy smiled. It is in these moments that he treasures having a son who wants to protect his kingdom and his people. Who is willing to fight for his own people. I couldn't be more. If I don't stop now I'll have problems with Eskener for being too proud. The boy just tilted his head a little because he didn't understand and his mother just laughed. Your Majesty, we must begin with the appointment of His Highness. The fairy who was a servant and had served the fairy kings for a long time spoke to her king. Well then, let's get started. The fairy nodded and in a song implored the great tree. O great tree that protects our well-being and our existence, I implore you to please judge His Highness, see his soul, and tell us if he is worthy of being the successor of the fairy king. The branches moved, one of them was at his forehead and another at the height of his chest. The chestnut tree, receiving a last look from his father that gave him security, faced the branches and let them touch him. At the moment of touching it, a pink light appeared, causing those present to cover themselves. The light dimmed, and the 3 present along with the oldest fairies looked in amazement at what their eyes were witnessing. The golden aura surrounded the little boy and the branches lifted him off the ground, making him look as if he were in a trance. The fairies could not believe what they were seeing. King, what's wrong? Diane asked worriedly. The tree accepted Issei, but it's incredible, says the king, unable to believe what his eyes were witnessing. The prince's magical power is more than, she said, trying to finish her words and holding an apple in her hand. More than what? Diane asked, desperate because she didn't get an answer. It's more than 8,000, he shouted, leaving the apple in his hand like puree. Diane couldn't believe it. At that age she hadn't shown such a level of magical power. But King looked at this seriously. His son has a high level of magic power, and not only that. The tree didn't seem to want to let him go, so he only came to one conclusion. Issei's soul is powerful and pure, almost on par with a goddess. The branches lowered the child and moved away, then a bud of pink leaves approached. The bud opened like a flower, and a golden spear was stuck in the bud itself. Issei didn't understand until his father spoke to him. "It's your sacred treasure, Issei, the tree itself made it, you just have to touch it and it will be linked to you. Once you touch it, nothing will be able to separate you from it and you will know its name." The boy walked slowly at his father's words and with some fear touched the spear with one of his fingers. The moment he touched her he felt as if his very soul connected to her, as if they formed a bond. The same spear rose by itself and floated. It reached its new master. The spear was wrapped in a golden light and then changed shape and became a doll. The girls couldn't help but squeal at how cute the doll was. It floated to the right shoulder of its bearer to smile at him and hug his cheek with much love and affection. "Wow, Issei, now you have your sacred treasure, but could you tell us what it's called?" King asked curiously, as did Diane and the rest who were wanting to know. "Mavis, her name is Mavis, Papa," he said, caressing the doll's cheeks with great affection, and she closed her eyes enjoying his touch. Years passed. And now the prince is 15 despite appearing to be 12. He trained under the tutelage of his father and mother. Not only did he become a prince, but one day while training with his mother, he discovered that his body had turned into metal, and with each dance step his powers increased. His mother was proud that day, knowing that her son inherited her magical power creation apart from disaster. Now he was flying around the kingdom with his Mavis doll holding on to his hair, since his father had urgently called him, which couldn't be anything good. Meanwhile, in a large palace built on waterfalls and surrounded by nature, a discussion was taking place. "King, you can't send Issei to that place. Diane, you know very well what could happen if we let things happen. Why do you form an alliance with the angels? They got into trouble. I don't want my son to get involved with anyone from the three factions." "I know, Diane, but you know that we have had many attacks from renegade demons for several months now. Something is happening, and forming alliances is the only thing we have left to prepare ourselves in case a war comes upon us. I don't agree with sending him either, but he is our best warrior, surpassing the most talented giants and fairies." She didn't know what to say to him. She didn't want her son to be noticed for his great magical power. She also didn't want to let him go into danger of facing someone he couldn't handle. "Diane, if you don't feel calm, let me tell you that Sakura and Serena will go with him as backup. I've already given them the means to leave immediately if things get worse." With those words I was already somewhat calm. When the aforementioned arrived, they knelt before their kings. Il Harlequin and Diane, sovereign kings of Lorien, they both said. "Stand up," he ordered. They obeyed. "I called you for an important mission. You must ensure Issei's safety at all costs, where I will assign you your mission." When I finished speaking, the doors of the room opened. "I'm here, father." "Tell me what's happening," asked the fairy, worried about what could happen, especially if it's the kingdom itself that's in danger. While in a human city called Kao located in Japan, young demons of the Citri nobility maintained a barrier that did not allow them to escape the battle that was taking place inside. The heiress of the Citri clan and sister of the Mau, Sona Citri, looked on helplessly as she was unable to be of further help and as her beloved school was destroyed. "If only we had more help." But she was taken out of her thoughts when she saw a golden portal open on the ground and 3 young people came out of it, and one of them had magenta butterfly wings and a cane with pink flowers on the tip of it. The 2 had armor clothes on their arms and chest, while the boy had a different outfit. "Who are you?" she asked, because they were allies of the enemy. "We came to help, miss. Please, we ask you to remove the barrier and let us pass." The only man in the group did not like that. "Hey, you dwarf, what right do you have to ask for something like that?" However, the prince ignored him. "Miss, I know you have reasons not to trust me, but just like you, I want to protect what I value most, and if I don't go in there and stop the person responsible for this situation, it's all over. That's why I ask you to allow me to take charge and stop this before it's too late." She, despite the sincere words of the young stranger, she doubted that he could do anything against a threat within the barrier. But something in her told him to trust, to believe in her words. Hence, he did the least logical thing. "Do you swear you can stop this?" He didn't know why she asked for his word. The fairy instead just put her right fist on her chest at the height of her heart. "And I speak. I give you my word that I will stop this and save your school. It is a promise I will keep." Sona, despite a rational side telling her not to trust him, gave in. "Remove the barrier now." The servants looked at each other, questioning if what their leader was doing was right, but in the end they obeyed, removing the barrier. Once removed, the image-haired fairy twirled her staff and chanted. To then hit the ground with that without knowing how several jacaranda trees with lavender leaves and a lavender barrier rose, which was powerful. "Your Highness, the new barrier has already been lifted," Sakura said. "Well, I want them to come in so I can help the wounded inside. Your Highness must know that what you are facing is a stronger being that could have a magical power of 20,000 or more." I know calmly, I know I might not be able to win since we are tied, but I have to try and avoid a war that also affects our world. I want you to stay out of it, and if something happens get everyone out of here through a portal. But your highness, your majesty asked us. Serena, until the situation worsens we must continue the mission. If your highness. Okay, he levitated from the ground, surprising the demons as he didn't seem to have any kind of wings. Let's go. He flew towards the epicenter of the situation. With 2 turns of his staff he cast a spell that enveloped all the demons, and then the lavender aura disappeared. I gave you the approval to be able to pass the barrier, now you can enter is what she said, and then with the honey-haired girl entered the barrier. Wait. They both stopped when they heard Sona. Who was that boy? She wanted to know. No one could hold his gaze with such passion to protect something. To which they only responded. He is my prince. And without further ado they ran to help him. The situation was critical. Fairies. Heiress of the Grimoire clan and sister of the Mau. And also one of the strongest young demons faced one of the leaders of the fallen angels. Becabiel. He stood firm despite receiving a shocking revelation. The death of the biblical god. She looked at her servants and saw that they were also shocked. Plus 2 who were in shock. One of them was Yudo Kiba, his loyal knight, who suffered greatly due to the horrible projects that the Holy Church made when he saw his companions die worse than laboratory rats. And her tender bishop whom she considers almost a younger sister, Asia Argento. She was very devoted to God, and despite everything that happened to her, she did not stop worshipping God for all her happiness of finally having the friend she always dreamed of. But seeing her fainted in the arms of her queen Akeno Himejima was the straw that broke the camel's back. She was furious. And I was even more so when I saw how Becabiel himself gave a speech worthy of a war leader who only cares about creating wars and demonstrating supremacy. And his 4 lackeys who supported him, one of them was Rainer, who has caused many problems for Rias. Hence. Akeno, take care of Asia is what she said while walking with her hair covering her eyes. Rias, aren't you thinking, asked his queen. But he did not answer them. I just walked towards them who were still gloating over their supposed victory. Becabiel. The aforementioned put all his attention on the Redeed, who not only walked but also tightly held the handle of the sword that she never took out of its sheath. Your actions have made me angry to the point of not caring anymore, and you will pay dearly for that with your life. What happened? Nobody expected it. A dark mark suddenly appeared on his left temple, and his eyes, which were once blue, became dark as a void. But it doesn't end there. The dark energy emerged, leaving the fallen in shock. Among his servants who did not know what was happening, only one was worried. Using that mark and the power of dark matter gives him an incredible increase in power, but the risk is that he could lose control. Well, who comes first to die at my hand, she said seriously, as if her personality had changed. The lackeys and Rainer felt in that dark side of fear like they had never seen before, as if they saw their executioner. Nobody attacked, but there is always the idiot who never thinks about the situation. He launched himself with a spear of light ready to cut off his head, but without knowing how it happened, I ended up losing my arm, which the Redeed held in one hand while with the other she sheathed her sword. That left everyone perplexed, especially Becabiel, who barely saw the movement. I didn't even see when he took the sword out of its sheath. Kiba was the most surprised. But you is very strong, said Ika, who is the bearer of the Red Emperor Dragon. That's just a part. She was cursed by the blood of one of the most powerful demons, known for being cruel and serious with his enemies. She was cursed by the blood of the Commandment of Mercy, the 3rd son of the demon king Zuldris of Mercy. Akeno's words were more than enough to make many of the Grimoire family's servants tremble. Well, the poor guy screamed in pain seeing his arm cut off. Their screams annoy me. Shut up, she said while she pointed a sphere of destruction at him, and without a hint of compassion, she wiped him off the map. Hearing their screams stop and looking at the last 2. Who's next? The 2 lackeys did what they thought was the most sensible thing to do, run away. But Rias smiled. Idiots were Akeno's words when she knew what was going to happen next. An energy in the form of rays surrounded both lackeys, and they stopped for no reason. What do you think you're doing? Fight now, the cadre ordered, but they turned around and then knelt down before her. We will serve you eternally, Grimoire-sama. What just happened? Asked the knight without knowing why Becabiel's own lackeys were playing obedience to their king. It is part of Zuldris's cursed blood. I retain the power of the Commandment of Mercy. He who turns his back on me will serve me eternally. It's a terrifying power. Kaneko, the tower of the Grimoire entourage, could not find the words of her queen terrifying. Go kill Becabiel now, she ordered, and the lackeys obediently launched themselves into the attack of their former leader. I killed them without any problem with spears of light. The fallen one looked at her with an arrogant smile. So what I heard is true. You and Seraphol's sister were used by the ancient Mau faction to be their weapons by implanting them with the cursed blood of the 10 commandments, and it turns out that the commandments of the demon king remained in the blood of their bearers. She did not answer. I only speak seriously. Are you going to fight or just talk? Because we don't have all night. That made the cadre angry because he didn't take him seriously. Damn demon, we're going to put you in your place like the hitch you are. Stop cackling and fight, he said arrogantly, provoking the cadre. You've had enough, Rainer, bring me his head. It will be a pleasure. The Fallen, with a maddened look of revenge, launched itself with its 3 pairs of wings and 2 spears of light ready to kill. I'm going to get revenge for what you did to me that day. Thanks to you, I'm the laughing stock of my faction. He launched himself, and with his sword-shaped light, he exchanged blows with Rias, who had no problem keeping up with him. It's not my fault that you're weak and that I defeated you in a pathetic way. You thought you were superior when you obtained a sacred gear that only serves to heal. You didn't even know how to get the most out of it, she said, blocking all his attempts at attack. Without difficulty with her sword. Shut up, that power belonged to me. I had taken it and used it to rise to the highest ranks, but you and your pathetic nobility stood in the way of my plans, he shouted angrily, making his attack stronger. Both stopped, edge to edge. They looked into each other's eyes. If you only cry for your mistakes and don't try to become stronger, it only shows how pathetic you are, she said, still with a dark look. The Fall, instead of exploding with anger, just smiled in a macabre way. If I'm so pathetic, then why did you fall into my trap? That confused her. Laugh at yourself. Bekeno's scream warned him, and he saw that he made a mistake. Seeing dozens of spheres of sacred light above, he took advantage of the fall to kick her and get away from her. The Redeed rolled a little and got up immediately. Die for my damn light, cheap hitch, holy rain. And with a movement of his arms, the lights took the shape of a spear and fell straight to Rias. His servants could not go to his aid because they were so hurt. Instead, she is in trouble, cursing herself for being too confident. Just as he was going to use his sword to deflect the spears that could. Bumblebee. The fast object at an impressive speed destroyed all the spears of light, leaving only flashes. And without being able to see the fall coming, his torso was somewhat short, causing him to bleed and fall to the ground in a resounding manner. What the hell was that? Kakabiel asked angrily. You show yourself, you son of a hitch, Rainer said, barely getting up in pain from the wound. My apologies, miss, but a lady should not speak with such vulgar language. What appeared to be a child was suspended in the air with a golden spear at his side. Excuse me, may I know who you are? Asked Rias, not liking being saved, hurting her pride a little. I came to help, miss. I'm going to offer you my support in this battle, is what the brown-haired boy said without even looking at her. I didn't need your help, and look at me when I talk to you. It's rude to talk to someone behind their back, she said, clenching the handle of her sword in anger. I apologize for my rudeness towards you. He turned to look at her, but we must. The fairy stopped talking when she saw her. You should. She was speechless when she saw him. For both of them, looking into each other's eyes, it was as if time itself had stopped. Issei met many fairies and female giants who wanted to court him, but the prince himself did not pay attention to them because his parents warned him that all the girls only want him for his title, so they told him to find that girl who reaches his heart. The only thought the prince had with a blush was, beautiful. The she-devil was no different. Since she was engaged to that idiot bird Phoenix, the members of the Council of Elders, she had a great aversion towards men, and even more so when at the Cow Academy. Everyone looked at her for her beautiful figure and her model attributes, which is why she hated them except for her acquaintances. But when she saw that boy looking at her, she didn't feel disgusted, but flattered. Since the boy himself didn't even have ulterior motives, she only admired his beauty as if it were something unique in his eyes, despite having the demonic mark active. She just thought while holding her right hand to her chest. Because I feel happy to be seen by him. What's wrong with me? Because I like to have his attention. What they both don't know is that something has been born in them both. They will discover that. Together. Battle and future plans. They both looked at each other. They didn't know what was happening to them. But one thing they were sure of was that the moment their eyes met, they didn't want to stop looking at each other. It seemed like a beautiful moment. But there is always someone who ruins it. Your Highness. It was the cry of one of her serene friends. She and Sakura were upset because they didn't like it at all that their prince looked at that demon. Hey, sorry about that. The poor fairy was blushing and looking away. No problem, she was the same and tried to calm her heart down a little. Instead, the angel was going to jump straight into fighting that boy. Rainer, don't face him, the cadre ordered him. He's too strong for you. I'm going to face him. The fallen one himself prepared a spear of light and with a push of his wings. Just when she was a few meters away, the fairy made the spear block the attack with a movement of her hand. Leaving everyone surprised as he stopped the attack of a faction leader as if nothing had happened. Excuse me, my lord, but it is rude to interrupt a conversation, is what he said, holding his hand up to control the spear. That boy just moved his hand and the spear obeyed. Kiba asked no one in particular. Eyes. All the demons of the Grimoire nobility saw that the Citri nobility arrived. Weren't they supposed to keep the barrier? Akeno asked to know what they were doing here. They put up a new barrier, we came to help them were the words of Sona, who now ordered her servants to heal the wounded. But then the bishop along with the exorcists regained consciousness and looked to see who would stop Kakabiel's attack, as if nothing had happened. Issei-sama. All the demons looked at the trio who spoke. Asia-chan, do you know that boy? He is the fairy prince, son of the fairy king Harlequin. He helped me a while ago when I was still part of the church. The demons knew that name of the fairy king. Someone who is known among the factions for having been an ally of the factions in the times of the Civil War, helping the faction of the New Mayu in exchange for some resources and knowledge in magic, and helping heaven to prevent his followers from attacking his people. Someone strong who can far surpass the current Mayu Lucifer. The fairy prince is someone strong facing many powerful enemies. He helped me and Zenobia by saving us from a high-class renegade demon who had cursed red demon blood, Irina said, recovering and glad to see him. Not only that, he has helped us in other missions by eliminating cursed demons that had red and grey demon blood. He is the son of two deadly sins, which are King Harlequin, the sin of sloth, and Diana, the sin of envy. He is an existence that is not seen every day, Zenobia said, recovering and getting up from the ground. But between the aforementioned and the cadre, I recognize that way of fighting, and that energy. It stinks of fairy. You're the son of that bastard. The fallen man's tone of voice was one filled with resentment and hatred. Something that surprised the fairy. Do you have any problems with my father? Your father prevented the fallen from taking the underworld when they had their civil war by standing between the demonic territory and my troops, along with two other sins that helped him, but the one I hold most grudge against is your father for having humiliated me in front of my men and my faction. How is it possible that I, a cadre, have been defeated by one of the weakest races after humans? How is it possible that I, Kakabiel, someone who survived the holy war against God, have lost so pathetically against a fairy? It is a terrible humiliation. That is why I want to start another war. I want to get revenge on him and return him for that humiliation I had 400 years ago. Issei didn't expect that he knew about his father's exploits, but he would never have expected that he would make enemies who had some kind of grudge against him. So he just replied. The problems I have with my father are no reason to start another war. What kind of leader seeks war when he should be looking for the best for his people? I don't care if it's just me, I'll start the war. His gaze was hungry for battle. Issei knew he had to stop him. That will only happen if I allow it, and there is no way I will allow it, and with a movement he made the cadre retreat. He made the spear point at the cadre. Mavis Holy Spear Mode 1. Mavis. The weapon at hand moved quickly, making it almost impossible to follow for the battle-trained eye. The fallen one dodged as best he could, receiving some cuts and defending himself with his wings and spears of light. Shit, that spear is fast, said Sona's blonde servant. I'll stop you here, said the fairy with great determination. Well, with another battle. Rias stepped back while blocking the light attacks with her sword. I'll kill you, damn demon. She didn't answer him, she just blocked him without difficulty. Take me into account, hit, she said, launching an attack of light arrows that the Redeed dodged with great speed until she reached her position. But the stab that managed to wound her on the left side. She walked away moaning in pain and holding onto the wound. I'm sorry, but I can't waste my time with you anymore. I have to go help that boy, she said seriously, already tired of fighting with the fall. Rainer just wanted to kill her, but when she heard the demon mention the fairy, something macabre came to her mind. I see that you care about him, right? It will be a shame if you can't enjoy that tenderness of a boy. Those words did not please him at all. What do you mean? He asked dangerously. What do you mean? When I'm done with you, I'll go help Kakabiel-sama and I'll play with him. That boy is very grapeable. She wet her lips as she imagined breaking the fairy boy's mind. Instead you laugh. His eyes were shadowed by his hair and he gripped the handle of his sword tighter. And even more so when imagining all the perversities that the fall could do to him. And how his innocent eyes, full of joy and courage, were obscured by pain and hopelessness. Are you planning to hurt him? It was more of a whisper that was not heard and was not directed at anyone. Well, now I'm going to finish my revenge. She created a spear of light much more powerful than any of the ones she has created. With incredible speed he launched himself straight to stab him with the spear and end his life. It's over. But it wasn't like that. Since the she-devil stopped the attack with only 3 fingers of her left hand covered in dark matter. The fall could not believe it. But what? You're thinking of hurting that boy. That's something I'll never forgive you for. His voice only instilled terror in the fall, and he became more terrified when Rias effortlessly broke the spear of light, making nothing. And without knowing it, she was behind him, slowly sheathing her sword. After hearing the sound, a huge cut appeared and gushes of blood came out, staining the floor, filling her slowly. The pain was so immense that I couldn't speak. But the thing did not end there. Rias summoned purple flames from her right hand. I will kill whoever dares to hurt him, even if that means going against my faction. I will protect him as well as those who are important to me." And without mercy he launched a dark fireball, burning Rainer still alive to ashes. "I swear on my life," he said as he watched the fire consume what was left of the corpse. A moment of silence passed and then his mark disappeared, falling to his feet with his knees collapsed and breathing heavily. "And by the way," put a hand on his chest that doesn't stop beating when the image of that same prince comes to him. Rias questioned. But at the same time he liked it. He couldn't continue with his thoughts as he heard a loud noise coming from the battlefield, which is the main entrance. "I have to go help him." "Don't do it." A voice in her head spoke to her. She already knew him. "And why not, Zeldris-sama? I could see that her magic power is very high, surpassing that fallen one. That makes me feel sorry for him. That fairy is strong and will have no problems eliminating him. She will just play with him." She stood there thoughtfully at the words of the demon who was once feared in the war. But at the same time, even if she didn't want to, she worried about that fairy who captivated her with those innocent eyes free of impure desires. "You're attracted to it, right?" asked. The witch she just blushed. "No, I don't know what Zeldris-sama is talking about. I've told you before, you're a demon. You shouldn't care what others or even I think. Enjoy every moment of what you do, whatever you do, and don't regret anything." She listened to him. Since the sympathizers of the old Mau faction implanted Zeldris's cursed blood in her, he has supported her in many ways, apart from training her in the art of the sword and the use of dark matter and the flames of purgatory. She sees him as an older brother who is willing to defend her, even though he doesn't want to accept it. So hearing him tell her to follow her wishes despite what her clan and faction would say made her happy. "Thank you, Zeldris-sama." Even though she didn't hear a response from him, she knew he heard her. And smiling happily he went to see that fairy. Already wanting to know the name of the fairy who steals her size. The battle between the fairy and the cadre was still going on. The Kabiel trying with surprise attacks to strike a blow, but Issei was fast. And not only that. His spear appeared to protect him from any treacherous attack his enemy had, and he hit attacks both cuts and stabs. Getting wounded and bleeding in places I didn't know about beforehand. But he didn't care. I didn't feel the pain because I felt a lot of hate. Hatred for that boy who was the son of the being who humiliated him in front of his faction. Still remembering that day. Marked red hot. Instead, Issei. He had a calm look. Not one full of arrogance nor one of superiority. I just looked at the fallen man with a feeling. Brief. Something the demons noticed. The fallen man breathed heavily, ignoring the pain. Who do you think you are to look at me like that? That look is what I hate most about your father, that look of pity." The prince did not respond. He just moved his fingers and the spear spun, trying to cut the fallen one, who blocked it as best he could. With another movement the spear turned and with a blunt end, it hit Kabiel's chin to send him flying. The fallen one stopped spinning and with more hatred, extended his arms to create about 5 dozen spears of light. "Die by my light, you filthy fairy." Instead, Issei. Sacred Spear Mavis Mode 5 increase. The spear spun and then shone in golden light, turning into hundreds of golden-handled daggers. Leaving the young demons impressed. "Does that spear change shape?" asked the blonde Citri. "It is one of the 10 forms that the sacred spear can take," Sakura answered as she raised her staff, and the flowers shone, and then a dome of magical energy formed that covered everyone. Fire against fire. And with a snap of his fingers the hundreds of daggers went straight to the spears of light that also shot out at the fairy. Both volleys of attacks cooled off of each other, allowing some to drift off and end up in various random places, including Sakura's magic shield. When he thought he had calmed down, Kabiel did not see that behind him were hundreds of more daggers. The prince, with a movement of his fingers, let the deadly rain fall on the fallen man, burying him in the ground. "He's beating a fallen leader." No one answered the question of the pawn Citri. For a small one he is very powerful," said Akeno, amazed by such power. But one of the demons, Sona Citri, could not stop admiring such power and feeling that aura not only of purity but of nobility and justice that the fairy herself radiates. He wasn't like the arrogant and stupid demons he had met. He was different. I couldn't deny it. He was attracted by that will that he had. And his demonic side did not leave him alone for wanting to desecrate him. "You should do it, you surely won't resist, and don't lie because you can't do it, ha 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 ha." The voice in her mind spoke to her and she decided to ignore it. But he stopped his thoughts when he saw that Kabiel was getting up with more wounds and with a lot of hatred directed at the fairy. "Damn fairy. You have been through a lot and many wars have made you what you are now. You should rest now in peace. Stop looking at me like that." And out of the trial he launched himself directly with a spear of light in both hands to kill him. But just when I had it in front of me. Just as the young demons shouted at the fairy to run away. Slash. Something happened. The fairy's spear had blood on the blade. And without further ado, a large amount of blood gushed out of a clean cut that ran across his chest. Staining a little the fairy who only looked at the fallen. He fell to the ground, staining the floor with his blood and dying slowly. But the fairy stood by his side and, holding one hand on his chest and another on his forehead, he spoke. "I don't feel hate anymore," he said calmly. "That's strange, it doesn't hurt anymore," said the fallen man, trying to breathe through the wound. The fairy smiled with small tears coming out of her eyes. "You can rest easy now, my lord." Becabiel, looking at that fairy now without hate, only did what none of the demons present nor less Rias that was behind the fairy could believe. He smiled calmly. To then look at the sky and say with a last breath. "Thank you. And when I close my eyes." He died. The fairy with a movement of her fingers. Holy Spear Mavis Mode 4 Sunflower. And from the earth a huge plant came out, then it opened its petals and a golden light charged into it. And with the snap of his fingers the plant obeyed, firing a huge burst of sunlight, disintegrating the fallen body. As the attack ends, what was once the body of an enemy is now just a smoking crater. A huge flower shone in golden light and returned to its normal dull mode. Everyone looked at the fairy who silently prayed for the fallen man to find eternal rest. Rias understood everything, and now more than ever she wanted to protect him. "Calm down, your highness, he's already in a better place." "Thank you, Serena." "Ara, why do you seem to feel bad?" "My prince is very empathetic, he tends to have empathy for everyone, even for his enemies, it's a quality that makes him unique," Sakura answered Akeno's question. He was going to approach his king, but he felt something. "Your highness," someone crossed the barrier. Just after saying those words someone made an appearance. He was a person covered in white armor with blue gems and blue wings that made him intimidating. The person went down to the ground and looked for something or someone. "I came to take Becabiel, where is he?" The person who sounded feminine spoke. He died at the edge of my sacred spear. I hope there are no reprisals since Becabiel forced us to reach this situation," said Issei in a neutral and diplomatic way, not wanting to have to fight again. The girl remained silent and then sighed. "That won't be necessary, I'll take priest free to be interrogated," she said to take the crazy priest who was unconscious but stopped for a moment to see the fairy better. Something that Sakura and Serena didn't like. Not to mention Rias and Sona, who had their almost demonic marks visible. Although the latter was questioned. "You know, for a fairy you are not weak at all, I can feel that your level of magic power is superior to everyone here, tell me what your name is," she demanded. "Give me your name, Miss Dragon, and I will give you mine." He did not give in to her demand. She just approached the prince in a threatening manner and leaned a little. "I would slit your throat with my bare hands if I didn't have to bend down." She stops talking when the edge of a sword and a spear threatened her. They were the demons who had their marks active and they were very upset with the stranger. "You wouldn't be able to touch his neck," said Rias with her sword in hand and with a cold voice. While the rest stood on guard and Sakura along with Serena pushed Issei away to protect him. The atmosphere was tense. But she just walked away, but not before looking at the fairy. "We will meet again, fairy prince." And taking Friede left. Everyone let out a heavy sigh. But things calmed down, the Mau reinforcements along with the Mau themselves, Serzinch and Serafal, arrived while Issei spoke with the envoys of the church in Asia to catch up with them. Something that Rias noticed and felt jealous of them and even more of his bishop who kept hugging him and smelling his neck, making the fairy nervous. Iridide was grateful that her brother along with Serafal wanted to see who silenced Becabiel. "My name is Issei, Prince of the Kingdom of Lorien, son of the fairy king Harlequin and the giant queen Diane. It is an honor to meet you, Mau, Lucifer and Leviathan." Both Mas were imprecise, they never thought that the fairy prince would help and defeat Becabiel. Both Mau Imatu were blushing a little at the serious and diplomatic way the fairy spoke to her older brothers, showing that her way of speaking comes from her father, the fairy king. "I am very grateful to you for helping to avoid a war, and I would like to see if we could talk to your father so we can reach a peace agreement with the other factions. My father has plans and wants to be able to speak with you soon." The conversations continued, and both heiresses could not stop admiring the fairy for speaking with maturity before the leaders of the underworld and having a firm stance before them. Both Mas noticed their sisters blush towards the prince, they couldn't help but smile, since in their opinion, he was a good prospect to be their brother-in-law. Serzinch already had plans to see if a political marriage could be reached, not only to strengthen the next alliance with the fairies and giants, but also to make his sister happy, who could not stop looking with longing at the fairy who gave the redeed and the black-haired girl a smile or two. "His Highness informed you that I have already prepared the portal to return to Lorien. We must give the report to His Majesty," Sakura informed, already creating a portal with Serena to leave for her home. "Understood, with your permission I will retire and have a good night, Mau-sama." He bowed out of respect and said goodbye. But wait. He stopped when he heard the redeed talking to him. I turned to look at her and see that she was approaching. "What do you want, miss?" I did not introduce myself to you for what I wish to do. My name is Rias Grimoire, and I hope to see you again, your highness. Titles are not necessary, you can call me Issei if you want. I should say that Issei, you can call me Rias if you want. Of course, Rias. At that moment, in full view of everyone, they both did not stop looking into each other's eyes, losing themselves in them. Instead, the leader of the underworld only thought, I must speak with the fairy king as soon as possible for a political marriage, so my Rias will be happy. Your highness, she spoke calmly, causing both of them to blush. I'm leaving now. Will we see each other again? She asked, not wanting the fairy to leave her side. I will be at the meeting, I hope to see you there, Rias. And I hope to see you there too, Ice. But before the fairy could leave, the demon pulled him a little and kissed his cheek tenderly and smelled his hair, which was like an orchid garden. And the same fairy felt nervous because of the proximity of the red-haired girl, leaving his face that would be on par with her hair. And like any decent man, he ran straight to the portal without waiting for his other companions, who looked at the demon with notable jealousy, also entering the portal. While Rias, only with one hand on her chest because of her beating heart, looked where the portal was with a beautiful blush. Ice is so cute when he gets nervous, phew, how I wish to have him in my arms. The demon just smiled, wanting more from the fairy, not knowing what rival she will have in the future. And an adventure has begun for both of them in their lives. My man. And that's all, your majesty. It was Sakura who gave a detailed report to her king. The fairy was alone on her throne, along with her queen Diane, who also heard everything. Okay, Sakura, there's just one thing I want to know. Why isn't my son here giving the report? Since he's the one who usually does it. Both girls did not know what to say to their kings, they only sighed to tell them the truth. His highness locked himself in his room after arriving by. Why did that damn demon dare to kiss him? Serena expressed with some very noticeable jealousy. But what they both didn't know is that the queen's aura turned macabre and violent. King, who was watching everything, did not dare to speak because he knows that when his wife makes that aura appear, the best thing to do is to flee. Tell me, girls, how is it that a demon kissed my tender son? Both girls hugged each other in terror at seeing their queen like that. While in Issei's room, the same prince. I'm stupid. The same fairy was badly spoken of. Why did I fly away when she kissed me? Now I look like an idiot, especially when I see her again. Since he locked himself in his room, all he has done is just rant about his fear and nervousness in front of girls. But he didn't deny that when the Redeed kissed him, it was something he had never experienced in his short and immortal life as a fairy and giant. But when he kissed me, I felt like I reached the sky, that long crimson hair, those beautiful blue eyes, those thin lips. And suddenly that image of her kissing him came back to his mind. And now he had one of them smiling at him, making his heart beat 100 times an hour. Making him blush and put on a face like a fool in love. She's so pretty for a demon, she must be an angel, he said while spinning around still in his daydreams. But I made a fool of myself by running away when he kissed me. What am I going to do? While her doll sat on the bed watching as her wearer floated back and forth. He did not deny that he was jealous when that demon kissed his master, but he also did not deny that he was amused to see his master as a nervous child, far from being the calm and polite prince. It was time for his master to behave like a young man of his age. Oh, it can't be, and now what do? I don't know if I should talk to mom and dad about this, or if I should keep it to myself. But he couldn't continue rambling when there was a knock at his door. Issei, I respect your privacy by knocking on the door, but as your mother I reaffirm my authority by entering anyway. And without subtlety he kicked the door to see that it was Diane herself, who was very angry. How do I know? Let's just say that dark aura doesn't bode well. I want to talk to you about that kiss they gave you, young man. The brown-haired boy was terrified, just like Mavis, who hid under the bed, and at the door the same girls were watching, and with their eyes they asked for forgiveness. Issei just thought. I had a good life. While in the underworld. In a luxurious mansion. The black-haired queen looked at a red-haired king who kept smiling and drawing the image of the fairy on many sheets of paper. And in one of them there was one where she blushed. The she-devil just hugged the leaf with many hearts around it. Why did Mayu have to leave? Why didn't he stay longer to enjoy him more? She kept having fantasies about the fairy prince. Just remembering the softness of her cheek on my lips, that intoxicating smell in her hair, that innocence in her golden eyes. And every time he imagined it, his heart would not stop beating and… Hi. He screamed with excitement as he rolled around in his big bed. He's my perfect guy, my fairy. I fell completely in love with him. I see you are in love. Below his queen smiling politely. And how could I not be? I feel happy to meet the first guy who noticed me, and not my titles and my body. Not only do I like his polite personality, but I like to see that pure and cute innocence. I already want to see him again, so I don't let him get away from me. He said all this while releasing many hearts and embracing the drawing more. The Menno couldn't be happy for his king and friend, although he was a little jealous since he was sincerely attracted to that prince and hoped to get to know him better. Now you talked about a guy, Rias. I hope he's your fiancé because you're engaged. The two turned to see that it was a young woman with short brown hair and purple eyes who entered without knocking. The Grimoire got angry. To which he responded. It was against my will what they didn't even ask my opinion besides, my fiancé is having sex with his own entourage and has affairs with other women, and you're telling me that I have to be loyal to him. Watch your mouth young lady, you and Razor have to conceive a new generation of powerful demons, just as the council declared, and what is this? He said taking the drawing from his daughter and looking at the image. Give it to me, she tried to take it away from him. But I stop when I see the frown on my mother's face. Can you explain to me why you drew a child? His name is Issei, I met him just yesterday, and I would ask you to return my drawing please. You're supposed to be engaged, behave as such and do not seek adventures with other men, and even more so with a child, she said, looking at the image in more detail. What he does is none of your business, besides he is very precious to me, 1,000 times better than that bastard of a Razor, since he sees me as a girl, and not as an object or just a piece of meat. Well, forget about that child, you have a duty to the Grimoire family if you don't do it. I remind you that we have a deal, mother, I would try to meet Razor in exchange for you letting me do whatever I wanted in the human world until I graduated from college and I kept my part of the deal, and let me tell you that it was the worst date I had in my life and it was my first date. The brunette couldn't say anything, and even more so when her daughter did fulfill her part of the deal. Now it was her turn to fulfill it, even if she didn't like it, and even more so when she looked at that image. He felt like he had seen him somewhere, but he couldn't remember where. Now if you'll excuse me, I'll leave and I hope you don't do something, right? The mother did not respond. That's it, you show who's boss. These were the words of Zeldris, who heard everything, making Rias smile because she has the support of her brother. And so they left in a magic circle, while the brunette only clenched her teeth in anger and helplessness since her daughter, ever since Zeldris's blood was implanted in her, never obeyed her parents, she only obeyed her brother. She wasn't even interested in being an heiress or the integrity of the clan. He was only interested in his own affairs and his own entourage. Something that frustrated Venelana. But I couldn't do anything. A week passed and things went back to normal. But some changes. Zenobia, who was previously an exorcist, joined the Grimoire clan upon learning of the death of the biblical god and decided to start a new life. His knight Kiba, upon fulfilling his revenge, returned to being who he was before, but he wanted to thank the prince, not only for helping them in their battle against Kakabiel, but also for wanting to meet him. Asia did not stop talking about how she met the prince, something that everyone noticed, especially Rias, who had all her attention, since her bishop was the one who knew the fairy best and wanted to know everything about him, for when she saw him again. Things were calm. But they were about to change. And that in a classroom of first-year students they were about to receive someone new. When he arrived, he entered by order of the teacher and he introduced himself. My name is Issei Harlequin, I hope we can be friends. It was the same little prince dressed in the male school uniform and his Mavis doll on his right shoulder. He had introduced himself politely and with his royal aura. Making girls blush and have unhealthy thoughts and boys extremely jealous because a boy comes to take away their chance of having a harem. They already had enough with the handsome boy Kiba. What they didn't know was that Issei himself was 15. Instead, the prince only sighed because this idea of entering a human school, and especially cows, was his Aunt Merlin's idea, which was necessary to form future alliances with the demons and other factions. Something that Diane did not like, since she did not want her baby to go to a school full of girls where they could steal his chastity, and even more so when through threats she managed to find out from her son's mouth who this Rias Grimoire was. But through persuasion from King and Gother they were able to convince her. Of course, I went through study sections by the doll that, thanks to its magical power, was able to acquire knowledge of a university academic level and make it so that the same fairy could have them. Passing the entrance exam without any problems. But now, he was nervous because he was not allowed to use his fairy powers. The only reason he accepted is so he could meet with that red-haired girl, since he hasn't stopped thinking about her for a long time, and even more so when he had a dream where he was marrying her. Just remembering her in her wedding dress made me want to see her even more. The questions came. Some were the normal ones. How old was he? Others were very uncomfortable. As if he had a girlfriend. But there is always a jealous person who seeks to make the new one look ridiculous. Don't you know that toys are for children, especially when you have a doll? How gay. The girls didn't like that, as they noticed that that doll was something important to say. Instead, the prince only said, "Wow, I'm surprised that an orangutan knows what a toy is, especially one that has low self-esteem." That made several people laugh, and all the girls laughed even more as they insulted the guy who was known for his perverted acts. "What did you call me, boy?" I asked angrily. "If you suffer from deafness it is not my problem since what I said was clear. I make a fool of the guy who would seek revenge. But he doesn't know who he's messing with. The break has arrived." And Issei was looking for his friends Serena and Sakura so they could eat together. I already had the bento that had pork, his favorite. But just as he was looking for them, the same fairy was pushed, causing his bento to fall to the ground, who was crushed by the foot of the same guy who tried to humiliate him. "Oops, sorry, I think I didn't see you." The fairy looked at her bento, already thrown, and stepped on. His doll was angry as that arrogant human dared to hurt his master. "What a pity your lunch is on the floor, why don't you eat it where your place is, boy?" Smiling arrogantly, he pointed at the floor, hoping that the fairy would obey out of fear and eat like an animal. But I don't expect him to get up and dust off his uniform and then walk away. Something the guy didn't like. "Hey extra, I gave you an order, come eat." The prince stopped and then imprisoned him and told him. "I'm sorry, I thought you would be too hungry to eat it on the ground, but if you want you can, I'm sure it's still edible for an orangutan like you." Oh. That was from the boys. And the girls were afraid because the guy was one of the strongest in the karate club, so no one messed with him. Instead, the guy only got angrier when he saw that the kid wasn't even afraid of him. "What the hell is wrong with you, Brad? Aren't you afraid of me?" "Fear? Why would I feel fear toward someone who is much weaker and more inept than me? The only feeling you can give me is pity." Oh, the boys again, and louder. And the guy was just getting richer with anger at being humiliated by a few simple words from his victim. "Damn kid, don't you know who I am?" "No, and I'm not interested in knowing. I have more important things to do than learn a name that I'll forget in 10 seconds, so if you'll excuse me, have a nice day," she said, smiling, making a fool of the worst bully in school and going to find her friends. But the guy. "Damn you, I'll make you know your place, which is on the ground beneath my feet." He launched himself angrily at the fairy. But this agile mind easily dodged that treacherous attack. And after more attacks he dodged them as if nothing had happened. "Damn you, stop moving. I'm not so stupid as to let myself be hit." But through carelessness he did not see that two men caught him off guard and grabbed him by the arms. "Damn it," he said while being trapped. "I got you," the guy said, now throwing a punch, but he didn't wait. The fairy with her flexibility jumped and gave a double kick to both and quickly put a foot so that the bully would trip. Issei just looked at the three. No, it wasn't true. He looked bored with Mavis on his shoulder, smiling and clapping like a little girl. The guy stood up to now raise his fist. "I'll hit you, damn extra." But someone stopped him by taking the doll. To the hell, I stopped talking when I saw who did it. It was Rias herself who stopped him and tightened her grip, hurting his wrist even more, causing him to kneel in pain, and with a kick he was thrown to the other side of the courtyard. The two lackeys ran away from there in fear. While the guy, seeing the Redeed's cold and lethal gaze, just threw up his pants and ran away. As for Rias, when she looks at the fairy, she leaves her cold side and then smiles affectionately at the fairy since she wanted to see him again. Issei, who was blushing and at the same time happy to see her again, could not articulate a word. The girls were jealous as they didn't like that the one Isama had her eyes on the new guy who was cute. Something she noticed, so without any shame she took the boy and kissed him in front of everyone. "From now on, whoever has any problems with my man will have to deal with me." All that in silence. Nobody could believe it. And more Issei who did not believe it. The only thing that was heard from his mouth was a huh. Yeah, Issei's first day was one he'll never forget. Objectives and more. All the members of the Gremory nobility were looking at something they never thought they would see in their lives, especially when it comes to their king. Let's say ah. And it was that her king, a girl who was cold with the others and more open with her servants, was with some chopsticks feeding the fairy a little katsudan pork, a Japanese dish. The fairy, with a blush on her cheeks, ate a bit of what the Redeed gave her from the chopsticks and smiled as she enjoyed its great taste. "Many and how delicious," said the fairy, making the demon smile. "I'm glad, I thought you wouldn't like what I prepared." "Did you do it?" I asked. "I think it's pretty obvious that yes," she said, smiling. "Wow, it's amazing." They both laughed and played a little with the food while feeding each other. The spectators not only watched but searched for a logical explanation for their king's behavior, since he has never ever done something like that, much less for a boy. They knocked on the door and it would have given way to the entire Citri entourage who, like them, were also left in disbelief. And it was that Rias Gremory, since Zeldris's blood was implanted in her, was known as the Crimson Executioner for not having mercy or some pity for her enemies. She has always been distant with everyone, even with her entourage, although they respected her, since it must not be easy for the underworld not to see her as she is and see her only for her power and her body, being the most desired by the air demons. But now she was smiling like a girl in love, looking at her crush smiling, you know those smiles that make the coldest of all fall in love. And they wonder how did it happen? Well, we can know that with a flashback. It was a morning a day ago when the fairy entered Cow, so when the sunlight hit his face he woke up. But when he turned around he felt something soft on his face. When he opened his eyes he could see that there were two of them. Well, it was Rias Gremory who was sleeping with him naked next to him. The brown-haired boy, realizing what was happening, tried to think how she found where he lived. But I'll put that aside and look for a way out of this mess. Only one thing remained. I will make a strategic retreat. He slowly slipped from the demon's arms, but at the slightest movement, she would regain her grip and not let go. I tried it 4 times and all 4 times were the same failed result. This is useless, she doesn't want to let me go, and now what do I do? Maybe I don't want to let you go because I don't want you to leave me. The same fairy heard and saw that the same Redeed was awake smiling at him. Good morning, Ice. Her soft voice made him blush and he couldn't help but get nervous. Well, good morning, Miss Rye. Rias? Hey? Just Rias, you are my man, I don't want us to speak to each other with honorifics. That made the fairy blush even more when she heard what she said to her man. Boo, but I thought what he said was a. But he was silenced by a kiss that the devil gave him, a very tender one. When he stopped kissing her she smiled at him. Have you calmed down yet? I asked him softly, to which he nodded, very enthralled by the kiss. What I told you that day was true, I want you to be my man, just as I want to be your woman. Since I met you, I can't stop thinking about you. I've never felt this kind of feeling with someone, and I'm glad it's with you. But we barely know each other, and we don't know anything about each other, the brown-haired boy stressed, although he cursed himself inwardly for saying that since he liked her. Well, let's go out, she offered simply. Ooh, but I've never been on a date. I'll guide you, even though my first date was a real pain, she said, wanting to forget a bad and heavy moment, since that date was, in her opinion, a pain. Did you have a date? I wouldn't say it, date. She still remembered how he, very arrogant, wanted to take her to a love hotel, thinking that she would be just anyone that they could easily take to bed. But I don't know what to talk about, or. I don't know either. I don't even know. Ice, what matters is that I like you and I want to be with you. I know we've known each other for a short time, but I really want you to be my man. She took his hands and put one on her chest at the height of her heart. My heart doesn't stop beating for you, I just ask you to give me a chance. What do you say? Will you give me that chance to be your partner? The fairy looked down. There was a moment when silence reigned in the place, but the hand that was on the Redeed's chest moved to touch her cheek with great affection and delicacy. She watched as the fairy looked into her eyes. Both young people's gazes did not break. Rias, I accept with one condition. Which one? She tried to hide her excitement and the desire to jump on him and kiss him fiercely. I'm the boyfriend, and giving him a smile. It was then that Rias got on top of him and kissed him like never before, to which he responded as best he could, feeling emotions he had never felt before being alone with her. Now he knew why his father told him that when he found the woman he loved, he would go crazy for her, and only for her. Instead, Rias wanted to have it, she wanted to possess it, she wanted to steal it and make it hers. He didn't give a damn what his faction would say to him. For him, he would even be capable of betraying them. Her dream of being loved for who she is by the person she loves could come true. Not avoiding a few tears from falling from her eyelids, which the fairy noticed and gently wiped away with her thumbs before smiling at her. Starting a very beautiful relationship. Then flashback. Now they were both in their own world, and that week they went out and got to know each other better until they knew each other's tastes. Sona, who was watching everything, couldn't help but smile at her friend's luck when she saw her happy, something she hadn't done for years. But she couldn't help but be a little jealous because she wouldn't have the chance to meet the prince who caught her attention. And why don't you take it away from him? It would be fun to fight over that fairy boy. That's not possible, and besides, you don't care about Galan Sama. I know what you want, you can't lie to yourself. Besides, it would be fun to see who would win between you and that brat in red. This old man wants to see a fight, ha 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 ha. The Citri just ignored that shrill laughter of her inner tenant, although she did not deny it. A small part wanted to meet the prince and steal him from Rias. But she won't do it, that's what she tells herself. Now we see Issei packing his things away as class had ended, and he smiled happily as he had spent happy moments with Rias and wished they would never end. But he knows that once the treaty is signed he would have to return to Lorien. And that scared him. And even more so when his mother finds out about his relationship with her. I have to talk to Dad so he doesn't leave here. I don't want to be separated from Rias. It's Rias Onasama. The fairy stopped her thoughts when she heard how many of her classmates were screaming at the arrival of her now girlfriend Rias. She came with a smile and brought a bento prepared by herself and added pork, her favorite. Eyes, she called out upon seeing him with great affection, making the boys very jealous. You laugh, he was happy to see her. I brought lunch, let's go. Excuse me, Harlequin-san. Before them stood the queen of Sona, Tsubaki. Hello. Aichu wants to see you to talk about some matters, and it must be immediately, she said seriously. That made him uncomfortable, and Rias didn't like that he didn't want his free time to be wasted. But he had no choice. Now Issei was guided to the council room hoping to finish quickly and go with Rias. Aichu, I already brought it here. Thanks Tsubaki, you may leave. She nodded and walked away, leaving the prince and the she-devil alone. What do you need me for, Miss Citri? The brown-haired boy asked politely. You don't have to be formal with me, Your Highness, I just wanted to talk about some matters regarding the meeting that will take place in 2 weeks. The 3 factions, along with the Kingdom of Lorien, will form an alliance in which we will all benefit. I'm aware of that, let's talk. And so they both talked about the subject, about things and matters that concern them both, but at that time, Sona could not see that the fairy knew about diplomacy and what the subject of governing is all about. He could see that the fairy was very sure of her words and did not hesitate in what she did. Those qualities were something that Sona was very attracted to. What are you waiting for? Do it. Unconsciously, she obeyed. Your Highness, would you mind having a game of chess with me? I don't know, I have to see Rias before the break ends. It's a quick game, it won't take long to play speed chess, I promise you. Okay. What she didn't know was that something hidden was going on. Sona was laughing maliciously inside, accompanied by Gallant, who was just patiently waiting for what was going to happen. They started with Sona taking the white pieces, and she made the first move. Minutes passed and now she was in trouble since Issei was smarter than she thought. His moves were incredible and ruthless, not giving the area a chance to counterattack. Just when she thought she could turn the game around, she saw that she was cornered. Well, I think it's checkmate. At the fairy's words, he only had one option. He threw his king away, giving up. Good game. Yes, Your Highness, it was a good game. They both shook hands for the departure, but what the prince didn't notice was that a magic circle formed on the back of the Citri heiress's hand. Well, if you'll excuse me, Miss Citri, I'm leaving, have a great day. Likewise, Your Highness. As the prince was leaving, she looked at the back of his right hand with a smile. It's nothing personal against Rias, it's just a good match. That's what he said as he put his hand on his chest, and Gallant laughed like crazy at the confrontation that was coming. Days passed and the relationship between the fairy and the demon improved every moment. From dates to secret kisses and the occasional grope provoked by the Redeed who wanted that. His interaction with the Gremory group was surprising since he became friends with them very quickly, so he was more involved with each outing and activity they did, like the moment they cleaned the pool, which almost made the fairy's heart jump out when he saw his red-haired girlfriend in a very risque bikini. But now he was accompanying Aika. They both talked about things regarding the meeting, hoping that the 3 factions would reach peace. But Issei stopped her when he saw who was at the door. She was a girl with silver hair and blue eyes, apparently 19 years old, with a somewhat rebellious appearance and smiling at the newcomers. Aika, without knowing how, her arms started to burn, making it known that it was the Hakuryuoko. Ara. My destined rival and my prey are right in front of me, it must be my lucky day. His smile, it didn't betray anything good. I don't think it's a good time, Valeria, that's my name, Your Highness. The unknown Valeria now walked straight to the fairy who was in front of Aika to protect her and avoid conflict. But what she doesn't know is that the destined conflict of the Celestials was something that mattered little to the Albina, and even more so if her smile, it was a nothing holy in the eyes of Aika, who was worried. Since Drake's carrier was not the Albina's target. If not the prince himself. We are crazy. I am Hakuryuoko, I give you permission to call me my beloved Valeria. The Albina approached slowly even though she had her eyes on the prince, who was not intimidated. His gaze was that of a predator wanting to go for his prey. But Aika stood up for him. Go away. Wow, I see you're trying to get between me and my prey. Tell me, do you want me to kill you now? But he couldn't continue when he felt 2 sword edges on his neck. Don't you think you're going too far? I will not allow the meeting of the celestial dragons to take place, and I will not allow you to touch His Highness either. Both of them released hostility towards her, who was not even afraid. I already imagined that they would appear. Did you imagine this too? At the fairy's words, she saw that there were thousands of daggers pointing at her above her head. When did he do it? She wondered in surprise. I'm going to have to ask you to leave or there will be problems. She just smiled unholily at the fairy. You know, ever since I saw you, you've caught my attention, and even more so with that enormous magical power and your race's abilities. Wouldn't you rather be on my side? We could have fun together, you and I. He already has an owner. It was the voice of Rias, who was behind and with her demonic mark activated. Looking at the Albina, wishing to draw his sword to kill her. She turned to see her. She will inherit from the Gremory clan. Hey, I notice you're angry. Are you so angry that you take out your demonic mark and want to skin me alive? You come to my territory without any warning, you threaten my servants, you insinuate to my boyfriend that it has nothing to do with you, it is because of him that I have not cut you in two yet and I make you suffer but do not tempt me, you are walking on thin ice. Oh, is it fear I'm smelling? Are you afraid that I'll take him from you? Since you know that dragons tend to attract the opposite gender. And then you see that no matter what you do, you won't be able to protect him like the couples of the Demon King's children. She remained silent, holding back the urge to kill her. Gelda, Zeldris's partner of mercy, died because he could not contradict his father and Elizabeth. What a horrible death she had when a huge 200-ton rock fell on her, just when everyone thought they would have their happy ending. Poor Meliodas suffered like never before. That is the fate of those who relate to those who have that cursed blood. Tell me, Eris, do you think you can bear such pain? Faced with Albina's words, she could not deny that most of what she said was true. Gelda and Elizabeth died, and they suffered all thanks to their damned father. But no, I won't be able to resist something like that. If Issei died, I wouldn't have any reason to stay alive. I see that you already understand the meeting will arrive soon, and the prince will return to his kingdom of fairies and giants. Once it is over, why don't you avoid that pain and let him go? Let a powerful dragon like me protect him. I leave it to you as homework. She said, leaving very happy with her words. Volderite, despite Zeldris's calls telling her not to pay attention to him, couldn't help but fall to her knees. Many believe that because she is ruthless with her enemies, she is not someone who is afraid or scared, but they are wrong. She has a fear that she has lived with since she was kidnapped and used as a laboratory rat, since she was locked up every day in a huge damp dark room where there was no light. From a very young age, she experienced the anguish of not having anyone to help her and comfort her in her pain. She experienced loneliness. That horrible feeling that hates and abhors. So much so that just thinking that it could be his destiny makes him break down in tears. Damn you, he hit the ground with his fist, leaving it cracked and having tears in his eyes. Looking at his reflection in a puddle of water from last night's rain, I look at his eyes, the same color he hates so much. He hates it, that darkness in his soul. Please don't listen to what she says, she may be telling the truth about some things, but that doesn't mean everything will be true. Rias looked up as she felt a hand on her shoulder. It was her fairy who smiled at her calmly and sweetly, wiping away her tears with the other hand. You are someone strong and you strive to protect us, risking your life in many ways. We all admire you, and we are willing to be by your side, because I know that even if you fall you will not give up. She at those words and that sweet smile could only smile. In both of their gazes there was only a feeling of love in them. Fairies symbolize light, goodness and innocence. Demons symbolize darkness, evil and perversion. Both beings are so different. How can there be love between them? The days passed and things for the couple were amazing. Of course there were some problems. Rias did not leave her fairy alone, since Valeria's words were still in her mind, so every kiss, hug and one or another provocative game was given by her, who enjoyed it. Issei didn't deny it, he liked that loving side of her. But she knows that this fear could lead her to make a fatal mistake, so she decided to help her overcome that by telling her to never leave her side. Everything was going well. Until that day. She was at the club signing some papers, wanting to finish quickly so she could go on another date with her fairy. The magic circle appeared once she knew. From it a brown-haired woman emerged. Daughter, I have news for you. For some reason he didn't like her smile, he had a feeling that something bad was going to happen. What do you want? Without manners or greeting, straight to the point. Something that bothered the chestnut, but she let it pass. The date for your wedding with Razor has already been decided, with a meeting of factions and a possible alliance. We must increase the prestige of the clan, so your wedding will be in 6 days. Don't you think that's great? You'll be able to marry a good prospect and you'll also bring new blood to the clan. The whole time the chestnut spoke she didn't say anything. He just stood up and with a serious look faced his mother. Mother, believe me, I love you, you are my mother, but I will not be an object of value for this. I will not tire myself out with that guy. Don't you understand? You are the heiress. You must do what is best for the clan. Clan that sees me as a monster. They themselves said that I should not be the heiress, and they are right. I did not ask to be the heiress, nor did I ask to be used for this. I don't care what you think and say you will marry Razor, there will be no more discussion. There was a moment of silence. And at that moment, the darkness emerged from the Redeed, who had her mark activated. Looking at her mother coldly and angrily. And who decided it? Why don't I remember having decided that? Then Alana did not admit it, but every time her daughter expelled her dark power, it terrified her to the point of forgetting to breathe. He took steps back and further when he saw how his daughter summoned her sword, already having one hand on the handle. The intentions were obvious. I am the only one who decides what I want in my life, not you or the Bucking Council of Relics, only I decide. And just when he was going to attack, the door would open with a bang to see the prince, who rushed straight to embrace his beloved and calm her down. Rias, please calm down, I'm already here, I'm not going to leave, no one will force you to do anything. The chestnut screams and pleas were enough for the demon to calm down. Humming too. Regretting what he was about to do. Issei? Yes Rias, it's me, everything is fine. She dropped her sword and collapsed to her knees before hugging the fairy tightly. Starting to cry. Issei comforted her. This was another reason for not wanting to return. He loved his kingdom, but he also loved Rias. And he swore that he will never abandon her. The chestnut couldn't believe that. In the state in which her daughter unleashes that darkness, the only ones who can stop her were her son and Grafia, who knocked her out. But seeing for the first time someone who only used his words to calm her down was something impossible. Who is he? Just as he was about to approach, a golden spear blocked his way. My lady, I'm going to have to ask you to leave immediately. At those words, she understood that perhaps it was not the best thing, since it had been a long time since she had seen her daughter cry. And knowing that she herself was the cause gave her pain in her heart. So, neither slow nor lazy, she walked into a magic circle, looking for the last time at her daughter who was still clinging to her fairy. Hours passed and she was now in a bed having Issei in her arms who was comforting her. Every night they slept together, of course they played on her part one or another game in bed. But now she didn't want to let go. His presence calmed her and therefore stressed her out. Issei, I'm scared. He didn't answer, he just looked into her eyes and touched her cheek. I know I'm scared too, but being with you helps me overcome it. They both couldn't take their eyes off each other. Maybe things are against you. Maybe fate doesn't want them together. But they don't give a damn about that. The hell with it. And with that thought, they kissed, sending everything to hell. Their lips and tongues savored every flavor of their lover. Each kiss was a repressed desire in both of them. Showing love and affection, not caring that they are of two different races. Everything was going well. Until Issei on impulse ran a hand along the leg of his beloved Rias until he touched her butt. And another hand touched one of her breasts, giving it a squeeze that elicited a moan from her. That moan brought him out of his trance, and he saw what he did. He blushed a lot knowing that he touched her without her permission. His mother would kill him if she found out. Rias, I'm sorry. Why did you stop? Huh? We were doing well, I like the way you touched me, but he began to undress. These clothes are very cumbersome. And just as she was about to take off her bra, he stopped her. No, I don't think it's time yet. But why not? We love each other and we also want to do it. I know, but I want to do it the right way. I want your parents to approve of me, I want your brother to approve of me. Rias, I know we don't know each other very well, but what I feel for you is something I haven't felt for anyone else, not even for Sakura and Serena. That's why when I see your parents I'll ask for your hand myself. Those words shocked her. The fairy was willing to ask for her hand. Rias, take me for a madman for what I'm going to tell you, but I love you and I want you to be my queen. There was silence. No one said anything until she spoke. You're right, you're crazy. At these words the prince felt that his feelings were not reciprocated. But I'm also crazy, very crazy about you. They were reciprocated. She pressed her forehead to the fairies. I am a crazy woman who loves you and wants to be your queen, wife, lover and woman, your woman. Between each kiss he said, exciting the fairy with more desire. At night they experienced what pure and true love is. The love between a fairy prince and a demon princess. 6 days passed and every night they played in bed. Of course they are still pure, since they want to do it while being united by a marriage vow. The fairy was determined that Rias would be her queen. And the demoness was determined to be with her king. They both loved each other and the whole school could see that. Leaving many jealous, especially Sona, who wanted to spend more time with the prince. But on the 6th day, both, sitting on the club sofa, alone, holding hands and kissing, they talked. On a topic that the fairy found very painful. What do you prefer, a boy or a girl? I would like a boy to spoil him. Well, I would like a girl to pamper her like my little princess, although we are too young to talk about boys. We are beings that can live for millennia, and I don't see anything wrong with it. I'd like to do it, she said this while passing a hand over the fairy's crotch, who blushed as hard as she could. But then he smiled as he also had one hand on one of her breasts and another on the crotch of the demon, who moaned from the touch, the sensation of his hands despite her clothes. You're not the only one who knows this game, I know how to play too. She moaned, but then she got on top of him and kissed him. Both touching their intimacies with each other, wishing to complete that act that would unite them for eternity. Both after the kiss looked at each other. I can't hold back any longer, you're not getting out of here, virgin. Correction, Rias, we will not leave here as virgins. And they kissed again, but this time each one's hands passed over the other's body, increasing the desire and body temperature even more. They were in their own world. They were so involved that they did not notice a golden magic circle, and from this flames came out. He was a blonde guy in a red suit who had the most arrogant smile, a smile that disappeared when he saw what he was seeing. He angrily just shouted. What does this mean? They both looked at the guy. They don't know it, but he will be the first of many obstacles in their relationship. If you want to be happy together. The Rating Game Part 1. King, I think it's time to talk to him. The king just sighed as he left some documents on a desk. Diane, I don't think we need to talk about that topic. Why not? I think it's time for him to look for his princess. There are many who want to have his hand. I think I should persuade him to let himself be courted by Serena, since she reminds me of me in many ways, besides that she has a strong character and good initiative in what she wants. You're wrong, I think Sakura is the one for him since she is attentive and sweet with him, she doesn't leave him alone, and she will always be loyal to him. Remember that she was the one who took care of him in the first years that he managed to fly. And so they continued to debate who would be a good wife for their son. But in a flash of gold appeared the most famous magician of all, Merlin. I'm sorry to interrupt your conversation, but I have some breaking news for you. They turned their attention to the sin of gluttony. Your son got involved in a demon affair between the Grimoire and the Phoenix. That left both of them silent. Oh no. A silence was present in the club. The Grimoire nobility present behind their mistress. And Rias sitting on the couch. With Issei at his side. While on the other was the same Rubio, now known as Racier, who looked at the couple with hatred and rage since it was his fiancée who was kissing another man, and even more so if it was a child. But that look of hate did not affect the couple. In fact, they both played at giving each other Eskimo kisses, which although it was tender, also made not only the blonde man jealous, but also the women present who would like to be in the Redeed's place. The blonde, already fed up with this display of affection, shouted. Enough. They both stopped at the scream. I want you to explain to me, Rias, why you were about to sleep with this boy when I am your fiancé. She just looked at him with boredom. I don't have to give you explanations, Razor. I've told you hundreds of times that I don't want to marry you, and what I do with my boyfriend is none of your business. Boyfriend? Is that kid your boyfriend? Don't come to me with that nonsense. If you want this engagement to be annulled using this human, you're wasting your time because. He couldn't finish because his cheek was cut without him realizing how it happened. It was Rias who sheathed her sword, looking coldly and hatefully at the Phoenix for what he said. You say one more thing about my boyfriend and I swear that your immortality will not save you from my wrath. Razor growled. How dare you, damn hitch, you must obey the one who will be your husband. What's more, be grateful that I agree to commit to you, since most of the heirs are afraid of you, since you have the blood of that mediocre demon. Don't waste time and kill him at once, said the demon, wanting to have his body and behead the Phoenix alive for such an insult. Don't test my patience, Razor, I'll tell you, and I won't tire of saying it, I won't marry you. Stop your tantrums and accept that you will be my wife. You know that attitude of yours is what I am going to fix, and I am the solution to that. Everyone understood what that solution was when they saw the lustful look the blonde had, which disgusted everyone. But one was not at all happy with that. Phoenix, and with all due respect, I'm going to ask you to please stop looking at my girlfriend like that and apologize to her. The blonde looked at the brown-haired boy mockingly. And why don't you go to an elementary school since that is your place, and besides you are just a child, don't you know that I am superior to you in many aspects? He couldn't continue as he felt something, a huge surge of magical power that made the atmosphere very heavy. It was the fairy who released her magic power while angry with the Phoenix. Apologize to her now. Despite the pressure, he smiled arrogantly. I will not apologize to a hitch who is destined to be my sewage dumping ground. Without knowing how it happened, he received a cut on his chest that, due to the force of the attack, embedded him in one of the club's walls. I just told him to apologize to her now. Next to the fairy, a golden spear levitated ready to attack. The blonde group felt the pain even though it regenerated. Damn you, how dare you attack me, look what you did to my expensive suit, he shouted furiously, lighting up in flames. That was not an apology. With an order from her hand, the fairy ordered the spear to turn like a drill ready to pierce him. Just when you thought things were going to get tough. Hi. The magical power more overwhelming than that of the prince made itself present, causing Razor to become frightened, and Issei only calmed down and then lowered the spear, even though it was ready to be used. I'm going to ask you to behave properly or I'm going to have to intervene on behalf of my master. She was a platinum-haired girl in a maid outfit who looked seriously at both of them, although she didn't seem it, she was surprised not to be afraid of the prince. Everything is calm now, she spoke. Your Highness, I must tell you that you are a guest here in demon territory, so you cannot interfere in matters like this. I'm sorry if I've somehow insulted you with my sudden anger, but the act that the bird Sen did is one that I will not tolerate. If he were in Lorien he would be executed by giants. Who are you calling a bird, you bucking brat? He was going to attack, but Grafia got angry again and raised her magic power to control the Phoenix. Ice coming. While Rias hugged the fairy so that she wouldn't fight, and in the process she passed her hands over her body. Her left hand was on one of his pectorals and the right one near his crotch, making him nervous and blushing. Something that the entourage and the maid noticed and were surprised, since that was an act that the perverted Ika would normally do. Ika just looked annoyed. And they call me perverted. Instead the fairy. You laugh. Zap. Aight. He gave him a karate blow to the head to get him to control himself. I told you that you can do that in private, he scolded the fairy, blushing. Shishi, sorry, but you are irresistible. That only reminded Zeldris of a certain brother of his. Meliodas. As for the blonde. He got angry to the point of not giving a damn if Graphia was there. He attacked the fairy with a fireball, but she spun her spear, causing the flames to disperse. Something he didn't like. You know what? I'm fed up with you, I'm going to burn you to ashes. Is that a challenge? Because if so, I'll gladly accept to put you in your place. When both were about to attack. Ani-sama. A magic circle appeared and from it a blonde girl. Stop, you are facing an ally of the factions. What are you talking about, Ravel? He's just a human child. He's not a human child, he's a fairy. They look like that because of their immortal nature, besides the fact that they are strong and he is their prince. He is the son of the current fairy king, who is the bear of laziness, and the giant queen, who is the snake of envy. He is Issei Harlequin, the son of two deadly sins, known as the fairy prince. That left him stunned. Since he knew who the fairy prince was due to his victory over the fallen angel Kakabiel. And what he also knows is that the fairy prince is someone on par with other beings due to his enormous magical power. He could not believe that the boy in front of him was the streetwise fairy prince. Now would be the time for the blonde to swallow his pride and apologize to the fairy and Rias. But we all know how stupid he is. We will still have a meeting in 2 hours. If you win, I will cancel this engagement and apologize to my bore of a fiancé. But if I win, you will serve the Phoenix family, becoming the slave and toy of my entourage. Issei was not affected since he knows he can win. But Rias got angry at that because she hugged the fairy and playfully bit her ear and then looked at the Phoenix in chibi form. I'm not going to let them touch what's mine. Rias, he said, blushing and embarrassed. Thinking about it, let it be a meeting between you and all my entourage. Don't worry, my future wife can help you. How reckless, good that it is so, said the fairy, agreeing. Well, don't go crying when you lose, because when I win you will see how I claim in my bed and on my wedding night what belongs to me, which is my wife. You better give me a good fight, fairy. And with a flash of flame, together with the blonde girl who kept looking at the fairy, she left from there. But just then another magic circle appeared and someone came out, someone the fairy knew. Othar-sensei. What are you doing here? That's right, the sin of lust had appeared. Answering your trick question, the temperature here is 28 degrees, so it is pleasant at this time of year. Now answering the real question, my reason for being here. I have come to inform you that the fairy king Harlequin orders that you return immediately to Lorien indefinitely. That shocked many of those present, especially Rias, who at the moment the doll said that, clung to the fairy and did not let go. You can't do it, you can't, she screamed, upset. These are orders from the fairy king, who is his father. You cannot impose his will on this matter, Gremory heiress. I don't care. His mark appeared on his forehead, expelling his dark aura, managing to intimidate his nobility. You will not take it. Oju-sama. Graphia was thinking of intervening. But the fairy hugged her. Calm down, I won't leave your side, and with tender whispers and caresses, he calmed her down. When his eyes returned to normal, she hugged him. His hug was not only loving but possessive. Looking over her lover's shoulder at Sin with a cold, merciless gaze. I will kill whoever dares to take you away from me. I don't care who it is, I will kill him. You don't have to do it. I love you and I want you to be by my side and I by yours. Hearing those words, the Redid shed tears. He loves the fairy and does not want to be separated from him. The chestnut tree dries the tears of his beloved demon with only his hands and kisses her with affection and love. Knowing now that a battle for their future awaits them. 2 hours passed and they were both ready. The fairy had her battle outfit on with Mavis on her shoulder, while the demon hers with her sword ready to fight. Both with serious looks waited with everyone watching them. But the Redid timidly took Fairy's hand, seeking the strength to overcome this adversity. Something that the prince himself intertwined his fingers. They both looked at each other, their eyes were already saying everything, causing jealousy in them who wanted to be in her place. And after a few minutes Graphia appeared. Your Highness Oju-sama, the time for the meeting has come. And both, surrounded by a magic circle, disappeared from the place, and in silence the rest of the Gremory entourage wished the couple luck. They smiled, implying that everything will be fine. Gathered in a large hall where many high-ranking noble demons watched what was going to be the meeting. In one place there were 2 thrones. In one was the current Mau Lucifer, while the other was empty. One of the nobles asked, Mau-sama, why are there 2 thrones? Are we waiting for another Mau? Nope, we are just waiting for a very special guest with whom I am going to form alliances. Mayu-sama, I think this meeting is a farce, so that abomination doesn't marry the phoenix heir, I should cancel this and kill that stinking fairy. But the nobleman did not continue speaking because a white rose pierced his heart and everyone saw that the white rose that was nailed to a wall turned crimson from the blood of the demon. Everyone turned around and saw the person responsible. That fairy is the prince and my son whom you insult, you dirty arrogant demon. And the devil before dying saw those who made an appearance. The fairy king Harlequin. Accompanied by her beloved queen Diane. And his loyal guards who were Sakura and Serena. The council elders were going to give the order to attack the guards, but Harlequin-sama, it's a pleasure to see you again. I haven't seen you since the civil war. Sergeant spoke respectfully to the king. And you became very soft, sirs. I had told you that a king should not give in to the greedy and pretentious. I apologize for the behavior of my people towards you and your son. Don't worry, but you must put things in order as they should be, sirs. Now all I want is to see my son and meet the young lady who managed to make him fall in love, something that the most beautiful fairies and giants in the kingdom could not achieve. The Redeed smiled proudly upon hearing that his sister found someone who was thought to be unattainable. But I stop smiling when I see the angry face of a certain brunette who is Issei's mother. Diane-sama, is there something bothering you? Not at all, sirs, I just want to meet the thief who wants to take my son. It was obvious that she was more than upset. She was wanting to kill the Redeed. Just when the conversation was already lengthening in a magic circle, they were both shown in the middle of a ruined city. Making it clear to everyone that the battle had begun. The council elders were going to brag about the phoenix heir but kept quiet as they remembered what happened before. And both rulers watched from the thrones and the girls could not hide their jealousy when they saw the couple's intertwined fingers. How they wanted to be her. They both walked along the cobblestone streets that, although deserted, were romantic at that moment. According to the challenge, it was simple. That to the tower, passing the whole place surrounded by razor pieces. Just as they turned a corner they saw something that caught their attention. Look, Ice, that house is beautiful. It was a nice comfortable house for simple people without the need for luxuries, especially for a family of 4. You can't imagine you and me with 2 children and a dog. Well then, dreaming is not a sin. He blushed imagining that moment, but he didn't deny it. I wanted to have that future with her. Those 2 children are a boy and a girl. The cute dog. And they watched from the living room window as their children played. Dreaming is definitely not a sin, he said, blushing and smiling. Making his beloved blush, who with a loving and seductive look approached him and kissed him with tongue. While in the VIP, a chestnut just broke a table in half with a single blow. Poor table, and the worst thing is that his aura did not say anything good. That demon dared to kiss my baby. Something that those present did not say anything about because of fear, since they did not want to be victims of his anger. Well, I see your sister is a lady with initiative, sirs. It is King Sama, my dear little sister is crazy about her son. He smiled as he saw how happy she is next to the prince, something I didn't see before the kidnapping. And the 2 companions of the kings of Lorien were dying of envy. That should be me, was their thought. And not only them, but also the girls of the Grimoire entourage and a certain Citri who already wanted to claim the prince. Back to ratings. They separated a little with a thread of saliva connecting both mouths that wanted more. But they couldn't because. How disgusting. I'm sure she only kisses him because he tastes sweet. They both turned to see 2 green-haired twins in physics clothes, you know, white shirts and bloomers. Sate, don't you read the atmosphere? Asked Iridide, somewhat annoyed because I interrupted her at her moment with her fairy. Excuse us, but our king offered a full night with the fairy prince as a reward and I really want to have that night. They say fairies are sweet in many ways, I wonder if they are sweet in bed. That was what both twins said, who could not stop looking at the fairy with perversion and desire. But that made a certain Redeed angry. Now I feel sorry for you, but that's not going to be possible. The fairy smiled. Because this delicious weed is mine. They then fall in I'm style upon hearing that. Something that also happened with both leaders and a chestnut that already wanted to kill her. But the fairy gets up and angrily pulls the girl's cheek and she complains of pain. I've told you many times to do that when we're alone. Ouch, that hurts, she said, touching her cheek. Hey, if you're done with your couple drama, we want action. Both twins had taken out 2 dangerous chainsaws. It's time to cut. Ice, I'll take care of this, said the Redeed, walking towards the twins with her hand on the sleeve of her sword. Okay, just be careful, don't kill them please. I will do it only if you give me a reward. I already know what you're going to order, so okay, said the brown-haired boy, blushing a little. That expression on your face, I love it. And now motivated, she turned her sight to the twins ready to attack. I'll finish quickly, I hope, and don't be offended, girls. Oh, that's very believable. You just know, ha. She unsheathed her sword a little and then sheathed it again. 1,000 divine cuts. Nobody knew why he did it. But the green-haired twins unwittingly received lethal cuts all over their bodies, and their chainsaws were destroyed. They fell to the ground and glowed, letting people know they were out of the game. All the nobles and demons of the council could not believe the ability that the Grimoire had. I literally finished them in the blink of an eye. Iridied watched as the twins faded away and then walked straight towards her fairy, who was very amazed by her girlfriend's ability. "Wow, you're amazing, Rias." She just walked up to her fairy and grabbed him by the cheeks. He licked his lips playfully. "I know, and you already know my reward." The mischievous tone of the she-devil embarrassed the fairy a lot. He just let out a deep sigh. "Okay, this is embarrassing." Everyone watched as she pulled out a lollipop from somewhere, removed the wrapper, and licked it in an unholy way, making everyone more nervous and bribing the fairy. And then she put the palate in the chestnut's mouth. It was an indirect kiss, and she loved to see him blush like her fairy does with those topics. "You know, until we get to Razor's location, you're not going to get it out of your mouth. Try my lips on that popsicle." "Okay." And so they both walked back down the path, once again holding hands. Although Issei didn't look like it, he liked this, so now for some unknown reason he began to tremble. "I can only think. Mom, please don't kill me." Not knowing that she saw everything, absolutely everything. So more than 6-8 tables what a genocidal suffered his wrath. "Honey, calm down, okay? Don't go." "Too late, King." Since from a magic circle he brought out his loyal Gideon in reduced size. What was heard in that room, which was certainly shaking, was the scream of a jealous and angry mother. And his cry was, "Bring me Grimoire." The Rias will have a very difficult time with Diane. Rating Game Part 2. Sunflower. Purgatory. Do powerful attacks hit more girls who are Razor's pawns? Removing them from the game. Well, that was boring. We must save energy if we want to face Razor. I know, but together we will overcome it. They both smiled at each other and resumed their walk, being alert for possible surprise attacks. When they got closer to the castle, they were greeted by almost all the nobility and Ravel, who was watching everything from the sky. "Girls, I want you to take care of the Grimoire when you find the time. I must find a way to convince the fairy prince to surrender." "Ravel-sama, I know you want the fairy prince in your possession, but if we win this, my brother does not know the extent of the power that the prince has, and the truth is that I want to be his queen," was what she answered to one of the knights. Term 4 after. Parliament, Shu Lang, for the prince will have my support. The rest, take the others and attack the Grimoire heiress. The towers were launched and he walked away. "Well, I guess I'll take care of you, Mavis." The doll was at her side, grumbling. While the fairy dodged the tower's attacks as if nothing had happened. "Stop moving." And oddly enough he stopped. "We got you." The two towers were going to give a hook and a kick to the fairy's face, but his blows had no effect. The fairy was unfazed. Ravel didn't understand what was happening until he looked more closely. His body turned into diamond. That's how it is. The fairy's body was pure diamond. The towers walked away holding their limbs from the pain they felt. How did he do it? The Shu Lang, he is part giant, his partner told him, knowing what was happening. I thought she only had the weakness of fairies, which is being weak to close combat, but this puts the balance in her favor," Ravel said, annoyed that she hadn't seen this coming. "If you thought you could win, you were wrong. When my mother saw my magic, she trained me to not depend on Mavis. I'm not like all the fairies in being very lazy. I can fight with my fists if necessary," he said, his arms covered in diamond. In which he launched himself, and with a powerful blow he sent the half-mast tower flying. This was taken advantage of by the Chinese tower, which kicked it trying to hit it, but the fairy blocked the attack with her forearm and with a quick movement grabbed the foot and turned it around to send it crashing into a house, turning it into rubble. Then both towers returned to the fight, and now they were throwing blows left and right. He dodged with good agility with small jumps and the occasional turn. All with eyes closed. Ravel was confused as she watched what the fairy was doing. He was dancing. Dancing? Shit. Carla, Shu Lang, get out of there. Sandstorm. Unable to do anything, the two towers of the Phoenix family were caught in a sandstorm in which there was no visibility. They looked for the prince wherever they could see, but they couldn't. And without warning. Diamond bow. Both were hit by a powerful force in the neck that threw them crashing into a 2-story house where it collapsed on top of them. The storm calmed down and Issei was seen with his arms covered in pure diamond. He then returned to normal. Their enemies were defeated. Only one was missing. The fourth daughter of the Phoenix house looked on still in disbelief that her companions had been defeated. I would recommend that you leave. I don't want to hurt you." She lowered herself to the ground so she could speak face to face. "Your Highness, I know it's very disrespectful of me, but let me tell you that you are making a mistake by linking up with the heiress of the Grimoire family. And may I know the reason for that opinion? Because she is not worthy of being your wife. You need a woman who is your queen, not a powerful demon who inspires fear." Mind your words, Miss Phoenix. The one who is talking is the one who will be my queen. Something that Issei does not tolerate would be insults to those he loves the most. And Rias is someone very important to him. She is the love of his life. She has killed many. Even though they are renegade demons, she showed no mercy to them. The blood of the second son of the Demon King is very dangerous even for herself. In addition, there is the possibility that you will die from the curse. What happens between her and me is none of your business, miss. Your Highness, please must listen to me. I want to be your wife. I have been your admirer ever since I heard of your legend. The battle in the Gothic line against red demons 4 years ago. Your battle in a rancor 2 years ago against an Albion. You are someone I have admired. I beg you to accept me as your queen. I promise you that I will dedicate myself to making you happy. I'm flattered and everything. But I can't. He couldn't finish when he felt that he was being held by the body by the two towers who he thought were unconscious. Shit. Your Highness, I'm sorry. But in the end you'll be happy with me, I know it. When Ani-sama marries her, you'll be mine. He tried to free himself, but their grip was too strong, and to make matters worse, a circle appeared below his feet. Next to the blonde phoenix appeared the queen who was the one doing the spell. It was all a trap. I swear I will make him happy, Your Highness. Happier than she will ever be able to make him. I'm sorry I have to do this, but the end justifies the means. You Baluna, do it. Bombard. At the end of those words. Shit. Ha boom. What the hell? Rias had finished off the rest in a quick manner due to the use of her sword. Even the knights were not a challenge for him. But when he heard that explosion he immediately knew something was wrong. So he immediately went to see with Mavis, who was still on his shoulder. The dust cleared and it was seen that the fairy was still standing, but badly hurt to the point that she could fall. Until he fell to the ground. Fufu, here is your toy Ravel-sama. It's not a toy for my Ubaluna. Whatever. Anyway, I think I'll finish off that plague before it recovers. Queen Phoenix approached the fairy smiling proudly. It's a shame I don't have a phoenix tear. I have one instead, huh? It's not there. The fairy smiled and in her hand she showed a small bottle. I use the magic that man taught me. Rapture. Damn fairy, how dare you steal from me? He lunged to kill him with his fist loaded with fire. You've made me angry like never before. And just when I was about to punch him he stopped. A hand covered in darkness stopped the fist. The queen looked to see who did it, how she regrets having done it. No hitch, he bent the queen's arm. You have made me angry. It was Rias and she was angry. Damn, you finished off the rest. She walked away, breaking free from the Redeed's grip. Rias immediately took the bottle and gave it to her fairy's mouth. Issei, forgive me, it's my fault you're like this. I should have finished quickly. The queen was angry. Who did she think she was to ignore her? Damn hitch, don't ignore me, fight. She hit Rias with her staff and launched her away and then finished her off on the ground, creating a large sinkhole. Ubaluna Vasta Ravel knew this would end badly for her. The queen grabs the Redeed by the neck with her hand, laughing with arrogance. Is this the dreaded Crimson Executioner? What a disappointment I got. But what he didn't expect was that Rias opened her eyes. And with a powerful blow he sent the queen flying far away towards the main castle. She jumped to go straight to finish it. Damn, Ravel was about to curse more when she heard something behind her. With fear he saw that there were hundreds of golden-handled blades pointing at him. The queen ended up in a wall and barely got out of it. When Gremory came out, she hit him on the chin, sending him crashing into the wall again, but now breaking it completely. Two pawns who were there were watching everything and were shocked to see the strongest piece being dominated. The queen came out of the wall. I've been waiting for this, to face the Crimson Executioner. The most powerful young demoness. Really? She's the most powerful demon? Redeed hits him, but instead of hitting the body, she hit a body barrier which then shattered. She held her stomach in pain. You managed to break my body barrier, but it's not over yet, Hitch. The queen's magical power increased exponentially, putting the Redeed on alert. I have increased my magic power so that I can finish you off in a self-destruct attack. What will you do about it? Boom. Ah. A very powerful blow not only stopped the technique, but severely damaged the queen. So much so that he started vomiting blood. And you still ask? You hurt the person I love most in life, and the one I am capable of anything for. He withdrew his fist and the queen fell to the ground, almost dying. And that is your sin. He finished off the queen with one blow. We have no chance, we have to run away. They fled as Rias watched as the queen was removed from the game. But guilt was evident on her face for allowing her loved one to be hurt like that. Misery for later. Your partner needs you. She obeyed Zeldris's words and went straight to see her fairy. Issei. Wow, that personality reminds me of the captain. That was what the fairy king said, who was surprised by the Redeed's power. Aside from how I finish off the queen. Mercilessly. But something both kings noticed was something only they had seen. And more Diane. Diane-sama. Is something wrong? Serena asked. It's nothing, it's just that she reminds me of the captain. Captain? My Captain Sakura. The captain of the 7 deadly sins, Meliodas the dragon of wrath. And it was so powerful. So much so that with one outburst he could destroy an entire kingdom. I once saw him split a hill with a branch. A damned branch, the fairy king had said. Everyone, even the demons, felt a chill as they imagined the extent of the power of the one who was the most powerful demon. Meliodas. Are you sure you're okay? Yes, I am. I have already managed to heal myself thanks to the tears of the phoenix. Glad to hear it. Both had walked with Rias, being alert that something would happen to her partner. There was a moment of silence until. Issei. I'm sorry, Rias. She had been surprised by what the brown-haired man said. But why do you say that? It was my fault for not finishing my fight quickly. It was my fault for trusting too much. Because of my carelessness, I worried you. Rias felt her heart ache. He couldn't believe that his beloved blamed himself for that. So he gave her a tender kiss on the lips. There was no lust and desire, there was only love in that act. When they finished, she looked into his eyes. Those almond-colored eyes. You will always worry me whether you like it or not, and I will always be by your side whether you like it or not. You are the best thing that has ever happened to me, and I don't want to lose you. You are too, Rias. I can't imagine being without you after having met you and being by your side. No girl can make me feel what I feel for you. They both pressed their foreheads together, looking into each other's eyes. Having love in them. Rias, I love you. I love you too, Issei. I love you with all my soul. And so they held hands. With Mavis watching with a tender smile in the air. And their fingers intertwined in each other's hands. They returned to battle. Of course, Rias had him very close to her breasts, and he blushed like a prince. Not knowing that a certain chestnut-haired fairy mother now had a serious look, but deep down that scene reminded her of certain friends she had. Elizabeth. I hope you are happy with the captain wherever you are, and give me strength to watch my son being groped by a perverted demon. She had accepted Rias, although of course she will make it difficult for him to earn her blessing. I will be your worst nightmare as a mother-in-law. Everyone, upon hearing the somewhat macabre laughter of the giant queen, only felt fear upon knowing who those dark intentions were for. May the gods have mercy on her soul. The Rias will have it harder with Diane, and even more so with her motivated. Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.